Okay, here starts a second podcast, personal podcast. I just finished uploading and all that stuff, the first one, and it was kind of fun. So I figured, well, why not record a second one? Figure I'd go easy. It's probably the first topical or topic-based one. And I figured, why not talk about one of my favorite things in the world, which is Transformers. I am a toy collector. I collect a lot of different toys, but by far the largest thing I collect is Transformers. I've been a fan of Transformers, since, my first one was, Armada Overlord. That's the first figure I got for Christmas. Let's see, that was from Armada line, which was what, 2001, 2002? And I got it for Christmas from, I don't know who I got it from. All I know is I have a photo of me at my grandparents' on Christmas Eve holding it in a box. That's the only way I know it was my first one, because that was chronologically the oldest figure I had from childhood. And clearly it was a new in box, and shelf life isn't that long; it'd be multiple years. But I really got into it during the Cybertron, Transformers Cybertron, which is the third part in a trilogy of Unicron trilogy, which is that one came out about 2005, and that was back when it was still mostly kid oriented. That one ended right into the first live action movie, which was 2007, so I was really into it when that movie came out. I was just a kid. I was a young enough kid not to get a lot of the stuff in that movie and to not realize how bad that movie is. Sorry if you like it. It's bad. But I wouldn't start calling myself a collector until about, somewhere around, 2010 was it, that the Generations line started, which Generations line, to give a little bit backstory, around, 2006, I believe, the Hasbro started the Classic line, which was basically making modern quality figures based off from the original 1984, 86, the original Transformers characters, because Transformers was born in the 80s, and it's very 80s. The 3 major years, that's considered G1, Generation 1. First 3 years, 84, 85, and 86 are kind of the core of G1, and kind of culminated with in 86, the animated movie came out. And then after that, it was a slow decline until it kind of went away. Then there's Generation 2, which was tried to be a revival. And eventually Beast Wars came out, which was very popular. I believe at the time it was actually the most expensive animated TV show ever. A title I believe that was actually later stolen by Transformers Prime also. But that's one thing with these things, is I don't care to be correct in what I say. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. I don't care. But Beast Wars was followed by Beast Machines. And then there was the original Robot in Disguise show. It's gross. I don't like it. Then the Unicron trilogy started with Armada, and Armada's really good. Energon kind of sucks. I have quite a few figures from there too. I don't mind the figures, but they were figures I got when I was a kid, so that definitely changes my views on them. Then there was Cybertron, that I really got into. I would have little catalogs that get out and look at them, lay on the floor, picture how they would all transform. And then there was the movie came out, and then there was another cartoon called Animated. I don't like animated. A lot of adult collectors adore animated. For me, the art style was an obstacle I could just never get over. I do not like the art style of that show. I like the ideas in it, but I could never get over the art style. It just doesn't look good to me. And then the second movie came out, Revenge of the Fallen, which is one of the worst movies. If you watch it right though, it can be pretty entertaining. That's kind of true with all of the original, I guess, essentially now G1 live action movies. But right around the time or so, Revenge of the Fallen came out in 2009, and right around there, right after the Generations line started, which I'll get back to my point because I'm ramble. That's what the point of these things are. The classic line ran for a little while, and then it was followed up by Universe, which is actually the second Universe line, which is why it's usually referred to as Universe 2.0, which that line was a mix of, again, classic characters in modern engineering, and it's also a mix of old figures redecoed into old characters. That line ended, and then Generations started, which has become one of the core lines of collecting Transformers. It started off with an initial 11 waves, which at that point there was a certain target that was really close to us. We go every week, and I distinctly remembering buying most of those figures at Target. And I remember distinctly getting the Drift figure because he was so cool, and I was like, this guy is the coolest. I knew nothing of the character from the comics. I was not reading comics at that time. I knew nothing about it. All I really knew is what, since I was a kid, the reviewer I actually usually watched was MGO 316, was it? I can't watch him now. He's a bit cringy. I got no problem with him, but he's too cringy for me now. But I watched him a lot. I actually, at one point, had watched every single one of his videos. Then he stumbled a bit. Then after a little hiatus, after those like initial, I think 11, 13, 12, somewhere around their waves, it's probably nowhere close to that. But it restarted in conjunction with the second War for Cybertron / Fall of Cybertron series game, Fall of Cybertron, of figures based off of the game, because there's a few figures in the initial Generations line that were based off from the War for Cybertron game. The second Fall of Cybertron is my favorite video game of all time. I'm not into a lot of video games, but I adore that game. It's one of the only games I've ever been actively into a multiplayer. I love that game. I still play it. Then after that initial few waves, then they got into it was the Thrilling 30, because it was leading up to 2013, 2014, which would have been the 30th anniversary of 1984, which is when it came out. So it would have been the 30th anniversary. The Thrilling 30 is kind of the term for those years. There was specifically labeled the Thrilling 30, which there's supposed to be 30 of. Probably one of the biggest debacles, because I think there wasn't even, I think there was like 31, because they made the same, like they gave two of them the same one, and like it was near impossible to get them all, because like, there's multiple versions of a multi-$100 figure that was exclusive to a convention in China. It was insanity, and it was really poorly done. But those were good figures in the main line at that time, and those were, I got a lot of figures I love from there, and that ran till about the beginning of 2015. If you can hear that in the background, gotta love being in a basement. Then at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, is when they started the first part in what would become the Prime Wars trilogy. The first bit was called Combiner Wars, because one of the classic things of the 80s was there's groups of combiners, and there's your initial original combiner, which was Devastator, who was 6 parts, and only combined one way. But most of the combiners were this thing that eventually became called Scramble City combiners, where the torso, the big figure that turned into a torso, only turned into a torso, but all the limbs could be either a leg or an arm on either side. Jesus, that's so scary. So those had never really been done in modern toys until Combiner Wars. And then the whole concept of that line was these are modern good figures built around that concept. And they were good figures, and I was really into it. But as it went on, you kind of started realizing these are all kind of the same, basically 4 figures. They're all kind of the same. They all got the same thing. They all kind of work the same. Which by the end it was like, this isn't as fun as it was when it started. But that one ran for it ran for a little while. And it ran until about the mid of probably end of first quarter 2016, because 2016 is when I first went to TFCon, which I'll get to after I guess finish describing the timeline. Then it started in the mid of 2016 was kind of when Titan's Return hit shelves. Which Titan's Return, the main concept of them was this thing called Headmasters, because in the 80s there's a lot of blank master figures, and Headmasters were basically the robot turned into a vehicle, but the robot didn't have a head, because his head would separate and turn into a little guy that would be in the vehicle. So the Titan's Return, the main concept of that was the return of that, where all the heads turned into little figures. And initially I wasn't into that line, but I started buying more of them because I own almost every figure from the Generations line. I have almost 3,000 figures. Sorry, not 3,000 figures. I have about 700 figures, about $3,000 to $4,000 worth of figures. I haven't looked at my estimate. I have a document that keeps track of it all. Granted, those amounts are kind of based off from how much I paid rather than how much they're worth now. And there's a lot of the younger ones I had as a kid that are worth nothing now. So that's really only how much I've spent on it is that much. I don't know. I have no way of knowing what it's worth now. It's probably not that much. So after Titan's Return didn't last as long as Combiner Wars. And after Titan's Return, the next one in the trilogy, and the final one in the trilogy was Power of the Primes, and this is when it was given the name the Prime Wars trilogy. And Power of the Primes was kind of a jumble. Their concept was kind of they were trying to get kind of the other stuff unfinished out and kind of the leftovers or so. The main kind of concept is they brought back the combining features, and they had like armor pieces. So in Combiner Wars, one of the other big problems with it is the hands and feet of the combiners were kind of crap, because they were literally the same piece that could be a foot or a hand, and never was that good at being either. The Power of the Primes corrected that by they had a hand that was totally supposed to be a piece of armor, and then the bigger figures would come with the feet, and the limbs would come with the hand, and they're much better. And I've actually transplanted most of the Power of the Prime ones to the combiners. I still have combined. But Power of the Primes was just kind of sloppy thirds, and it kind of ended sooner than they clearly planned it. And that was kind of what ended kind of middle was second quarter 2018. And kind of currently what we're in is the first of is it the War for Cybertron trilogy they're calling it? And the first one is Siege, which is what currently are on the shelves in what month is it? It's April. It's April. I should know this. It's when I was born. But it's currently on shelves. I believe it's currently kind of tiptoeing around the U.S. into Wave 2. And I love these figures. This is every one of these figures really done it for me. And I'm hardcore into this one. Because this is kind of going back. The theme of this one is to go back to the war before they came to Earth. But it's a lot of really cool designs. I'm actually just looking at my shelves looking at them. But I really like these figures. They're some of my favorite in Generations for a little while. But around, what was it, early 2018? Was it earlier than that? Another major line startup following the end of the live action movies trilogy, because Dark of the Moon came out 2011, and then one of the best, probably the best of the initial live action movies, Age of Extinction came out 2014. Then might be my favorite of the original live actions. The Last Night came out. Shoot, what year was that? That was is that 17 or was that 16? I never really pinned it down. But I liked that movie, but that movie kind of failed in the box office enough to kind of kill it. But they were already in works for Bumblebee, Transformers Bumblebee, which hit theaters in December of 2018, and is hands down one of my favorite movies of all time. It's the first one not directed by Michael Bay, which is a major credit toward it. It's made by Travis Knight, who is he owns his own studio. He did that Kubo 2-string movie and some other ones. Is he the one that did Coraline? I'm not sure. But famous for his animated movies. And it was not produced by his studio that he owns. It was produced by Paramount. Or not Paramount. It was distributed by Paramount. I can't remember. But that one was the first one helmed by someone that actually liked Transformers. That movie, I actually got to see it. I caught when I hadn't hung out with my buddy in a little while, and was like, "Hey, you want to go see a movie?" And he's like, "Sure. What was playing?" And I was scrolling through, and I saw Bumblebee advanced screening. This is about a month before it came out. I'm like, sold. And I bought 3 tickets for him, his wife, and me to go. And those first few minutes, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but those first few minutes, I have never been so happy in my life. I will admit, I shed tears. I was so happy to see my absolute dream, the thing I never thought I'd see. It was perfect. It was one of the best things I've ever seen. And this probably sounds pathetic, but, I'm not a type of person that hides my emotions, and especially not positive emotions. And I consider crying out of, joy or whatever. I consider that a positive emotion. I don't have a problem saying that. Yeah, crying's fine. As long as you're not crying about pointless things, it's fine. And yes, I'm a grown man. I cried. Come at me, bro. But it was one of the best experiences of my life. I'm glad I was able to share it with my buddy. That was amazing. I ended up seeing that movie 9 times in theaters. Basically, everybody I knew I tried to get to go. All my coworkers, all my family. Altogether, I think I ended up selling 20 tickets, not including mine. Obviously, I went 9 times. I think 9. so there's 9 tickets right there. But that was a highlight. And around the time of the release of that, the figures that came out is when Hasbro revealed Studio Series, which is the first time they've actually, in my opinion, made consistently good movie-based Transformers. Because movie figures have always been either too complicated for their own good, or they're just not good. They never stand out. Like, there might be a standout here or there, but in general, they're just bland. But the Studio Series, almost every single figure is fantastic. And they're all so good. I've been buying as many as I can. There's so many of them, and every time it's just like, man, I'm enjoying this. Like, with the one sole exception of the classic Camaro Bumblebee, because that is a figure that every time I've tried to transform it into vehicle mode, it ends up across the room in a few pieces. Because I don't like that figure. I don't like that figure. No, they're good lines. One of my favorite figures, though, of all time is from the last night, the Barricade figure. Because it's a fantastic looking character model. I love that one. It kind of bummed me out that I'll probably never get a version of that Barricade. I'll always get the usual Barricade. And so, yeah. I'm happy that Barricade seems to be making a jump into other forms of Transformers media. Because he is an interesting character, of all characters. Like, you can call any of the actual robots from the original movies characters. But I guess character concept is a better idea, or better term to use. Yeah, I love Transformers. I also have some third-party ones, which, for those that don't know, third-party figures are, there's enough, Hasbro owns the right to Transformers with, Takara Tomy, who's the Japanese company that, also owns it or so. They make all their figures they generally have to make need to be able to be sold in stores to kids. So there are certain limitations. They can't do certain characters. They can't do certain features. They can't, they can't make a figure, the same way that, say, some fan with a bunch of money and a bunch of processing and stuff, like, they can. So, that's something that came out of the fandom, because it's a very good, strong fandom, because Hasbro knows how to keep a fandom happy. And one of the things that came out of it is multitudes of third-party companies that make the high quality figures that Hasbro can't. And that's whether, it's too complex for them, if it's like something that's niche enough that Hasbro can't make a buck off, it's not worth their time, or if it's a figure that, is a character that they could never market to kids. And perfect example, leanway into my favorite figure out of everything I own, which is Mastermind Creations' Coulter figure. He's based off from the character Tarn, from the IDW comic books, which is one of the best aspects of Transformers storytelling, is that essentially what started with phase 2 of the IDW comics, and it's award-winning comics. It's so fantastic. And Tarn is a Decepticon leader of the Justice Division, him and his 4 guys, they named themselves after the first 5 cities the Decepticons took over in the war. And their job is to track down Decepticon the traitors and runaways and stuff. And, seeing that they're the bad guys, they torture and do awful things to them. But it's interesting, because in the comics, those same comics, they're dead loyal to everything Megatron says. Megatron gives up Decepticon and essentially repents and becomes an Autobot. And Tarn finds that out, and he's like, my whole purpose for being, and it's an interesting character study because that's what comics can do with these things. Is you can't show action the same way a cartoon can. So what you get is character, and just character beyond anything that anybody else has ever done, honestly. But Tarn is the most. That character design is perfection, and Mastermind Creations' rendering of it into a plastic form is just one of the most fantastic things I've ever seen. The centerpiece of my main display is Mastermind Creations also did an exclusive version that's themed to be an Autobot. And so, because the important part of Tarn is that his face is the Decepticon symbol. And so they did a version of him in more traditional Autobot colors with an Autobot mask. So I have them standing angled, and then I have the Mafex Gwenpool figure, which is the only really high-end action figure I own, because I don't really buy expensive, non-Transformers. But I love Gwenpool, and so she's in the middle waving while these big, bad-looking robots stand on each side of her. I really love the way the stuff Mastermind Creations puts out. They also did a repaint of their remold of their Hot Rod IDW Hot Rod figure, and colored it as Override, which was one of the planet leader characters from, again, that original Transformers Cybertron show that I fell in love with Transformers through. And I love that figure too. And as I'm speaking, they also officially has announced that they are making a new version of essentially this new version of the Optimus Prime figure from Cybertron, which I am so excited for. There's also 2 third parties that are working on also versions of that same character from that show, and I so want them. They look so fantastic. Because that was always the figure that I could never have. Your kid, it's like, I want I want the super expensive one, Mom. And like, yeah, we can't get you that one, sorry. It's like, But now as an adult, I work hard, I make money, and I can buy those things that I never was able to get as a kid, and I have some good stories for that. But I've noticed that I've been actually talking for quite a while, so I think I will cut this short. I think I'll do a separate one on the Bumblebee movie, and I'll probably do a couple separate ones on conventions, because I love conventions, and I've been to several conventions, and I love conventions. But I'm just about on my raw recording about to hit 30 minutes, so I think I'll cut this one short. Thank you for listening. If you did listen to this one, I don't see many people actually listen to this one. I'm probably going to record another one to just try to put up, because, it's better to have more than less, and this one probably won't get as many listens, but I'm talking about one of my favorite things. So I'm not doing this for the views or I say listens, because to me it's all just recording, and I just happen to screen record the Audacity. Is the only video I do, is I don't feel like putting enough work into it. I just want to talk. And besides, free audio software, free screen recording software, no cost whatsoever. And so, that's just how I want to do it, because I'm not doing it for anything other than just to have something to do. I'm going to end this one here, and this one will probably take a while to upload, so maybe I might even upload what I guess will be the third one first. So, yep. See ya.